Hey, what's going on, everybody? So Jameson here. Just wanted to go live really quick and just get a few things off my chest. And I'm not going to wait and for everybody to hop on, because the people that watch the replay are going to be like, what's this guy doing? This guy, Jack Cat's just sitting here waiting for people to come on. When's it going to get started? So I'm just going to jump into this. Okay, so most of you appreciate what people like myself are trying to do. Most of you understand that the times in which we live. Ronald Reagan said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. You guys understand that this Gen Z, this generation that's coming up, that we could lose everything with them. So we live in a time, and this isn't to monger fear or to do fear mongering. This isn't to try to, push fear in any way, shape, form, or fashion. This is reality. Okay. And, I've had a few people between here on Facebook as well as on Instagram and a few other places say, Jameson, I like you, but you're just too negative. All you do is talk about Dan Crenshaw, and you don't really bring any real solutions to the table. What? Look, if you want to deny reality and stick your head in the sand, now, if this doesn't apply to you, then it doesn't apply to you. But if you're one of those people, it's like, Jameson, I like you, but you're too negative. All you do is talk about Dan Crenshaw and other RINOs like Greg Abbott or John Cornyn, right? You don't talk about any real solutions. Both of those are lies. Okay, number one, I'm not going to deny reality, right? Here's the thing. Whenever I ran for Congress in the 2022 primaries, I wasn't running to be your pastor. I wasn't running to be your business coach. I wasn't running to be your daily motivational speaker. I was running for a congressional position. And I'll come back to that here in a second. But second thing is that we are where we are as a country, not because of just Democrats. Democrats have always acted and voted like Democrats. We are here where we are today with our Constitution, our constitutional liberties, and the Constitution meaning less and less and less in the eyes of Americans, where they're willing to give up liberty for temporary safety. We're where we are as a nation because of RINOs and globalists. RINO is R-I-N-O, Republicans in name only. I'm not going to deny reality. So let's talk about solutions for a second, okay? It doesn't matter as a congressman if I had won in the 2022 primaries. It doesn't matter what I as a congressman, what kind of legislation that I'm ever going to write, because it is going to die in committee. I've said this on several occasions. We need to gut the government from the inside out. 90% of the government needs to go. 90% of the elected officials in office need to go. So how do we do that? Because that's where we need to start. See, I can virtue signal and I can say, when I get to office, I'm going to write this legislation that's going to protect this, right? Like Dan Crenshaw when he says, I'm writing legislation to ban red flag laws. Guess what? The ultimate, the supreme document of our country, the Constitution of the United States, already outlaws red flag laws. It's called the Second Amendment. There's this thing called due process. So it's a big giant virtue signal whenever you have these politicians that tell you that crap. We're not going to legislate our way out of the mess that we're in. We're going to get out of the mess that we're in by gutting out these RINOs and these globalists and getting America First candidates in there that aren't going to vote away 40 billion of your tax dollars to send to a country. Meanwhile, when you have people here in the United States that can't even get baby formula, but yet they're going to send pallets of it down to the border for illegals that are coming into this country. That's reality. So here's my action plan. For those of you that have never heard what my action plan is, number one, and this isn't really going to help, it's just going to make me feel better. Should, if and when I ever get to Congress, my first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look every single so-called Republican in the eye that is not acting and voting the way a Republican should. And I'm going to ask them how it feels to be a turncoat to the people in their district that elected them to do a job. Number two, that they're failing at miserably. Number two, I'm going to expose the voting records of every single RINO in office. I'm going to expose their voting records to their constituents. Well, Jameson, you would be representing Texas too. Why would you care about a congressman all the way across the country? Because me as a single congressman I can't do anything. Right? We live in a constitutional republic, not a democracy, not a dictatorship. We have a representative form of government. And if 90% of the representatives are corrupt and they're bought and paid for, there's not a single dadgum thing that I can do by myself. So I'm going to expose the voting, because you know what? There's a lot of people, as a matter of fact, in Congressional District 8, a lot of people love Kevin Brady. Why? Well, because he does things for people personally here and there. So people think he's a good guy. And you know what? In his personal life, he may be a good guy. But go look at his voting record. His Liberty score is less than 50%. It's like 46 or 44% Liberty score, which means that 44% of the time is all he votes conservative. He's not a conservative. He's been in office way too long, and he's not a Louis Gohmert. God bless Louis Gohmert whenever you can be in Congress for 18 years and maintain a 94 to 96% Liberty score. But but Louis Gohmert is an anomaly. He's the exception. He's not the rule. So I'm going to expose the voting records of all of these RINOs to their constituents. Why? So their constituents can vote their butts out of office, and we can get an America First representative to help people like me and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Chip Roy and Jim Jordan and these Freedom Caucus, these members of the Freedom Caucus. So that's the second thing that I'm going to do. And again, it doesn't matter what legislation I write. It's going to die in committee every time, because we have a system that is against we the people. And if we're going to overturn this system, I better be careful using that word. If we're going to fix the system, it's going to be up to us voting in regular people that are willing to put people over profit, people that are willing to not be politically correct so that you don't hurt feelings, but people that are going to be patriotically correct so that we can save this country. Third thing, let's talk about legislation for a second. We have enough laws on the books. Enough. We have enough legislation. Government is supposed to be limited. My job, it should, if and when I go to Congress and represent Texas too, my job will be to vote in a way that limits the federal government and votes down unconstitutional legislation, as well as legislation that expands the federal government, as well as legislation that increases spending. So I'm not going to Congress necessarily to write new legislation, but when I do, I hope to repeal bad legislation. But what was my second point? My second point being any piece of legislation I'm probably going to write is going to die in committee because it doesn't serve the global interest, the globalists' interest. So that's my action plan. And if you think that I should be doing something else, let me know in the comments. But I'm telling you, it's not going to matter unless we actually get America First people representing you. Period. The system is against us. That's why the Constitution exists. That's why our founding fathers wrote the Constitution the way that they did, used the language that they did. The problem is that the Constitution can only protect us to the extent that we're willing to protect the Constitution with our votes. Which brings me back to you. So there's a lot of people that are like, Jameson, what are you going to do for the district? What are you going to do to solve our problems? That's the point. It's not up to the government to solve your problems, because that's called big government. If you want problems solved, here's my suggestion. Start voting in school board elections. Start voting locally and start voting in your state races. But the reality is most people don't vote. They just don't. Less people vote in primaries, and even less people vote in midterms because people don't understand. They're asleep. So Jameson, why are you so negative? Because I'm trying to wake people the heck up. And you can either stand beside or step aside. You can stick your head in the sand and pretend like the world's not going to hell in a handbasket. But I want to challenge you to not do that. You can recognize reality and still be an optimist and still have hope. But you got to take action. You know, and that word optimist, it doesn't mean just blind hope and blind, sunshine and rainbows. It means that you look at the situation, you acknowledge the reality of where you're at, and then you watch this. You don't get triggered and all emotional. You then strategize. You use logic. You use this thing called your brain, and you look and you say, how can we, with the reality being what it is, optimize this to make the most of it, to get closer to our goal? That is what being an optimist is all about. The root word of optimist is optimize. So I'm not denying reality. I'm acknowledging where we're at. And unfortunately, most people are clueless. I mean, sure, gas prices going up. People are like, oh, what's going on? You know, the 2020 election woke some people up. But guys, the fact that 15% of voters, only 15% of voters have even seen 2,000 mules bothers me. It bothers me. So I'm working hard to put together viewings throughout the district of 2,000 mules. We have got to wake people up. Again, Reagan said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And I'm going to use a quick example, and then I'm going to jump off of here. Quick example. South Korea, just 2 generations ago, had, I think it was 3% of the population were Christian. Then they had revival, and that percentage jumped way the heck up. And then in 1 generation, because they couldn't figure out how to pass on the gospel to the next generation, the percentage of Christians in South Korea is now less than what it was initially. Literally 1 generation. Our beliefs, our faith, our morals, our standards, our principles, gone just like that. So guys, I want you to share this video. I want you to tag people that need to hear this message, people that may be asleep. Because at the end of the day, you can stand beside or you can step aside. But this is the front line, right here, here and now, 2022. And the question that I always ask is, what's it going to take? What's it going to take before people wake up? Is it whenever, I mean, we already can't own land, right? I mean, it's an illusion, right? Land ownership is an illusion. Property ownership is an illusion. Why? Because you pay property taxes. You're basically renting it or leasing it from the government. 2020, we saw rights trampled on based on lies. We saw what happened in the 2020 election. Guys, what's it going to take? That's all I got, guys. Love